Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the EdTech Lounge. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Network of Quality Teaching and Learning. Colleagues, you know that EdTech Lounge is a virtual space for faculty members to share experiences of teaching and learning with technology. In our previous EdTech Lounge session, a concern that many of our participants of the EdTech Lounge have shared is that this disruption in on-campus teaching and teaching from home is also causing various psychosocial and health problems for both our students and faculty members. And therefore, well-being of our faculty and students is crucial for the continuation of learning during this time. And therefore, today's EdTech Lounge session is focusing on holistic professional development for faculty members, where the focus is on how do we survive and thrive, in this environment of online learning from home. And our speaker today is Dr. Habiba Thawer, who is a physiotherapist by profession and has been practicing in Canada for the last 20 years. Dr. Thawer has obtained her postgraduate education in Canada, consisting of a Master of Science and a PhD in Rehabilitation Science. She is certified by the American Board of Forensic Professionals in the rating of impairment and disability. Dr. Thawer has built a practice in Canada focusing on the assessment and treatment of sports injuries and has extensive experience with building and implementing multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary rehabilitation programs in the areas of chronic pain management, geriatric rehabilitation, and women's health. She serves as an independent accreditation consultant for CARF and a provider of continuing education in rehabilitation. Dr. Thawer is currently serving as a TKN volunteer and an international consultant at Khan University Hospital in Karachi to restructure and optimize rehabilitation services. So welcome, a very warm welcome, Dr. Thawer, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Azra. I'm just going to take a few minutes here and commend Azra and her team on the phenomenal work that they've done to help our students and our faculty actually transition to online learning teaching. So hats off to Azra and her team for the tremendous work they've done. Okay, so I have about 10 pieces of advice or tips I want to share with our audience today, but I don't want to come across as being preachy, so I'm going to make this very casual and as fun as possible. A lot of this is based on existing scientific evidence, but again, I don't want it to sound like a lecture, so I'm not going to be citing any references, but I can provide those references subsequently if need be. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump in and get started. Azra, thank you for that generous introduction. Okay, staying healthy while we're working from home can be challenging because it's something that we're typically not used to doing, but I can tell you that it's possible. It's completely, entirely possible. And, I've been working from home in Canada for about 20 years, and I absolutely love it. And I have learned so much while doing so, and I'd like to share a few of those little tricks and tips with you here today. And, I realize that many of you have recently transitioned to working from home because of our current pandemic. And in theory, it sounds brilliant, right? You can sleep in, you can wear whatever you want, whatever you like. You can make yourself a fresh lunch every day. So those are all pros. However, on the other hand, there can also be some barriers or some challenges to working from home. There can be a ton of distractions at home. I don't have any children, but for those of you who do have children, I hear that it can be a bit challenging to work from home with children, especially because they too are learning from home with school closures. It can also be difficult and challenging to actually set boundaries between your workspace and your home space, or even your work time and your lifetime. And it's also very easy to fall into suboptimal habits, such as, running into the kitchen for a snack, perhaps too often than we ought to be snacking. And many of us actually want to go back to what we think is normal, which is working in an office at our usual desk. But what I can tell you is I've been working from home in Canada for 20 years, and I would never trade it in for an actual office space. I'm fortunate that I've found a way to work from home while remaining healthy, thriving, and being productive. So let's start. So the first tip I'd like to offer people is try to keep a morning routine, okay? Think about what you would normally do if you had to commute to your office. You would likely have to have a bath or a shower. You'd have to groom your hair, maybe shave, put on some makeup, of course, have a cup of chai or coffee, pack your lunch, perhaps. So try to do these things currently as well while you're working from home. It's easy to literally roll out of bed and get right onto the computer. And this may be tempting, but try not to do that. Try to keep your morning routine, or at least a part of your morning routine. You don't have to do the full routine, but at least part of it. Okay. The next little tip is try to get dressed. Try not to remain in your pajamas all day, even though it's tempting to do so. Wake up, go through your morning routine, and throw on some real clothes. You don't have to dress in full out business casual, but I like to wear something that makes me feel productive, that actually makes me feel good. It's something that I look good in. It brings a smile to my face. It just creates positive energy. If I have a full day where I know I'm going to be stuck at my home office working on manuscripts, then I'm still going to get dressed, but I'm going to be in my, comfortable worn-in jeans and my AKU hoodie because I want to be comfortable. I want to have the air conditioning cranked up, and I don't want to get cold. So really, really important to get into some comfortable clothing that makes you feel good, in which you look good. One of the challenges of working from home for me remains my puppy. That's Maximus, the white furball. He has a tendency to be a big suck when he's not getting any attention. So one of the, I think one of the benefits and one of the cons of working from home is having to deal with our pets, whether they're cats, birds, or dogs, or God forbid, reptiles. Some people have reptiles, I've been told. Okay, moving on. So one of the things that I do religiously is I make a to-do list or a list of priorities. And what I like to do actually is make a list where I keep track of what I have to do each week. And then what I do is every day I pick 3 to 5 items that I will prioritize to try to accomplish or move forward on that day. This helps me keep on track and helps me meet my deadlines, whether they're self-imposed or externally imposed. And to kind of make things fun, I have a journal that my mom gave me, and I document all of my to-do lists in this journal. It reminds me of my mom, and it gives me a lot of inspiration and motivation. So I try to personalize some of the tasks that I normally wouldn't personalize, just to give me that added energy and an added motivation and inspiration. The other thing that I like to do is, so this is me making fun of a to-do list, a little bit of Pink Panther humor. But this is a journal I was talking about. So, you know, I think it's perfectly okay to use things that mean something to you, to have these mementos around you as inspiration and as motivation. One of the most important, I think, tips that I can share is it's really, really important to have a dedicated workspace in your home if that's possible. And the reason why that is because I think it's really critical to keep your workspace, your actual office and workspace, separate from the rest of your life space, your home, your family, your leisure time. So I'm fortunate enough that in Canada I do have my own home office, and probably the two best investments I've made for that home office is a high quality chair and a sit-stand workstation. This is a hand crank sit-stand workstation just because I loved the novelty of a hand crank. It's kind of cool, it's old school, and it just really appealed to me. And it helps me work out my, my arm muscles 4 to 5 times a day, which is a bonus. So, you know, I can really confidently convey to you that perhaps the two best investments I've made to helping me maintain my sanity as I acclimatize to the process of working from home were definitely the purchase of these two items, the sit-stand desk and a really high quality chair. The beauty of the sit-stand desk is that, you know, as human beings, we are not meant to sit for hours per day. We're just not built for that. Our spine is not built for that. We're built to be objects that move, beings that move. And standing is far, far better for us than sitting. So this sit-stand workstation allows me to sit for a half hour to an hour, goes up the chins of the chair. Basically, it boils down to adjustability, okay? And, you know, you can get chairs now that cost thousands of rupees or hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. This chair cost about $700 about 10 years ago. So an equivalent chair would cost about $1,000 now. I'm not sure how many rupees that is. But if you're going to be spending 8 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week in a chair, it ought to be a high quality chair to protect your health, okay? So quickly just running through the features of the chair. First of all, it should be height adjustable. The seat should be height adjustable. Usually there's a lever that is found directly under the seat, such as this one here, that adjusts the height of the chair. Secondly, the depth of the chair, the distance from the front edge of the chair to the rear edge of the chair, and the distance between the rear edge of the chair and the actual seat back should be adjustable because some of us have longer legs than others, and this can have an impact on how comfortable we can sit. And the width or pan size of the seat is important. So we want the seat to be adjustable in height, and we want it to be adjustable in depth, okay? Sometimes it can also be adjustable in tilt. I don't consider that a critical function. So if you're on a budget, that could be one feature that you can omit from your chair. The second important feature I like to highlight are the actual forearm supports. These guys are critical. And I like a chair that has arm supports that are adjustable in 3 dimensions. So up and down, adjustable in height, laterally, adjustable inside to outside. So you can move this forearm support laterally towards your body, or if you have a wider girth, wider hips, you can then move this forearm away from you. And thirdly, these forearms actually rotate in, and you will understand the importance of that when I show you the next few slides, okay? So you want a chair that has forearm supports that adjust by height, by lateral shift, and by rotation. Then we look at the seat back. The seat back should provide support to you from your buttock region all the way up to just below the level of your neck, so to the upper back region. And many times this seat, the height of this is actually adjustable. I don't consider that a critical feature again. So again, if you need to save a little bit of cash on the purchase, you can omit that feature. But the feature that's critical is the tilt, okay? So this entire piece here can tilt forward or it can tilt back. And the last feature I recommend in a good quality chair is what I call a cervical or head support. This is really, really important, especially for people. This is going to sound funny, but it's really important for people who have a really long neck, because those are the folks that usually end up in physiotherapy on my treatment table because of neck pain, upper back pain, jaw pain, chronic headaches due to prolonged sitting with poor posture and with the poor chair at a computer workstation, either in their office or at home. So you want to have a head support or a neck support. This particular one I can adjust in height. I can adjust in posterior, anterior positioning, and I can adjust in tilt, okay? So I reiterate that, if you have the luxury of a dedicated office space, if you have a built-in desk surface, then at least try to invest in a good quality chair. A good quality chair will last you 10 to 12 years, okay? This guy is about 11 years old now, so he's still going strong. Okay, here is an example of what I see all the time at AKU, and I'm assuming for many people who are working at home at the kitchen table or at a makeshift coffee table, or even with their laptop in their lap while they're sitting on their couch watching Netflix on TV. So I'm going to point out the things that aren't optimal, and then I'm going to show you how I modified the setup to help my colleague work in a much healthier manner, okay? Thereby mitigating development of pain, different types of strains and sprains, including chronic headaches and chronic pain. So the first thing we want to notice here is that this individual uses a laptop. Laptops are notorious for encouraging poor posture. Why? Because they're not very large objects. The screens are quite low. And as a result, Farah here has to engage in excessive neck flexion to be able to actually view what she's doing on the laptop, okay? So over time, she develops a flexed posture. And this posture will lead to a lot of discomfort in the cervical upper back region. Eventually, she'll develop headaches. She'll develop strain in the neck, the upper back, the shoulder region. These are the trapezius muscles that get quite tight because of this posture, okay? The second thing I want you to notice is that her arms, her elbows are bent excessively, and only part of her forearms are supported, okay? The problem here is that this chair is, although it has a forearm support, this forearm support is quite low, and it is unable to provide support to the user's forearms while they're keyboarding and mousing. So this will lead to strain of the shoulders. It can lead to a lot of strain in these muscles here, as well as in the wrist. Okay, the third thing is her feet aren't really positioned appropriately. They should be kind of shoulder width apart, flat on the floor, which provides good support to the hips and the low back. And lastly, she's actually sitting quite forward in her chair. So her back is entirely unsupported. You can see there's a gap between the seat back of the chair and Farah's actual back. So this is a really good example of how not to sit when you're working at a computer workstation at home, which I understand can be a makeshift workstation. So now we're going to move on to how we can actually do jugaad, which I think is it's a Pakistani reference for kind of making the best of a situation with what you have. So I'm going to share my jugaad with you for Farah's workstation. So the first thing I asked Farah to do was to elevate her laptop on a box, okay? What this effectively does is it raises the eye line at which Farah can function. If you look at the previous slide, she actually had to she had to place her head in quite a bit of flexion to actually view the screen. But if you look at what we've done here by elevating her laptop, we've now brought her eye line to within 1/3 from the top of the monitor. That's kind of the guideline you want to use. You know that the monitor is at the correct height when your eye line or your eyesight falls to within 1/3 of the top of your monitor, okay? Okay, now, if you've elevated your laptop, it would be very awkward for you to actually use the keyboard and mouse in this position. So what I actually advocate to my patients, my clients in Canada, my patients here at AKUH is that they actually purchase an inexpensive external keyboard and an inexpensive external mouse so that they can actually use these devices at the level of the desk that they're actually sitting at, the surface of the desk that they're sitting at. Okay, so these are fairly inexpensive items that you can purchase readily online. The third thing is you need to ensure that you're actually sitting close enough to your monitor. One of the most common mistakes that we make is we tend to sit too far from our monitors. So a really easy way to check, once you've pulled your chair in as close as you can, okay, you see there's only about an inch, maybe an inch and a half between the anterior aspect of Farah's body and the anterior edge of the desk here. She's not back here. She's actually quite forward. And this is important because this allows her to rest her forearms on the table, on the actual desk for support. Because remember, we can't elevate these forearm supports. So they're essentially useless. So we have to find another way to provide support to the forearms. So by having Farah sit as close as possible to the desk, we're able to provide more support to the forearms. If we revert back to our previous slide, you'll see that only about 40% of her forearms are supported here, whereas with the correction, close to 75 to 80% of the forearm is supported, okay? So once you're in the correct position of sitting, then all you do is you basically stretch your arms out in front of you, ensuring that you keep your back in contact with the seat back and you don't lean forward. And the monitor should be at the tip of the middle finger. That will tell you the distance that the monitor should be located away from you, okay? So if it's way back here, if the monitor is way back here, you need to move it forward to here, okay? Then what I've done is this chair is a straight back chair. It doesn't have a built-in lumbar support. If you all just simply put your hands on your waist and bring your hands to your back, there's a natural curve in your low back, okay? With sitting, what tends to happen over time is that curve becomes rounded out. What that means is that it actually rounds out or flattens, and that causes a lot of low back pain, low back discomfort, and then further low back, more serious problems and injuries in the low back. So with prolonged sitting, we want to maintain a curve, okay? We want to maintain a concave curve in the low back. And an inexpensive way of doing that is by taking a towel or a pillowcase, rolling it up, and placing it at the level of the belt line, all right? And this will help enhance the natural curve in the lumbar region, which is the low back region with prolonged periods of sitting. If we can maintain this curve, then automatically the rest of the spine will adopt a good posture, okay? So this is the final picture of Farah. I like this view here because you can see that her ears are lined up with her shoulders. Her entire back is supported. Her forearms are mostly supported on the desk, and she's got pretty neutral, fairly neutral positioning of her wrists. They're not an extensive extension. She's got good eyesight view of the monitor. She no longer has to look down quite obliquely, and her feet are flat on the ground with about a 90-degree angle at the hips and about a 90-degree angle at the knees, okay? So this is an easy, inexpensive way that you can modify your existing home workstation if you're currently experiencing aches and pains, or if you're having difficulty sustaining 1 to 2 hours of sitting at your work home station. Okay, the next thing I like to advise people or share with people is to try to make a schedule, okay? This is a bit of a parody, but what I'm trying to convey is, you know, when you're working from home, it's really easy for the whole day to become blurred into one big day of work. And what I like to do is actually block out chunks of time. I'm going to spend from 9 o'clock to 10:30 working on manuscript A. Then I've got a Zoom from 10:30 to 11:30. Then from 11:30 to 12, I'm going to prep lunch, and until about 12:15 have my lunch. Then from 12:15 to 1 o'clock, I'm going to go for a walk. From 1 to 3, I'm going to get through at least 15 emails. And then from 3 to 5, I'm going to go back and do a couple more hours on my manuscript. So by blocking in chunks of time or blocks of time, generally the research tells us people are much more effective. The notion of multitasking is actually quite overrated. And I'm guilty of that too. It's very tempting for me when I'm trying to crank out a manuscript to look at my WhatsApp feed, to look at my Twitter feed, to play on Instagram or Facebook, and I really have to control myself. So I've given myself 10 minutes 3 times a day to go onto those platforms and have fun. And outside of those blocks of time, I don't let myself go on those platforms because you can end up spending hours and hours and hours on social media, and it's just not productive then, okay? So really try to make a schedule, and I personally like working in blocks, but find something that works for you, but try to use a schedule. Okay. I hope nobody in management takes offense. It's just a little bit of fun. So one of the things that I have to constantly work on, one of my weaknesses is that I usually skip meals. I'm horrible, horrible, horrible. I just simply forget to eat. What I really do enjoy though, and I actually feel better, is when I actually take time to enjoy an actual lunch break. And it doesn't have to be an hour, okay? If taking an hour lunch is too stressful, then don't take an hour lunch. Take a 20-minute lunch. Take a 30-minute lunch. Whatever you need to enjoy the meal. Also, if we're not multitasking while we're eating, we're actually enjoying our meal, we tend not to overeat. We tend to eat just enough to satiate our appetite, okay? And what I like to do again is eat outdoors whenever I can to try to get some vitamin D. So I might go to, if I'm on campus, I'm usually on campus at least 4 to 5 times a week. You know, I'll walk from my home office in my room at WR over to the staff takeaway in the hospital block. So I'm getting my exercise. I'm getting a bit of vitamin D. I go grab my lunch. And then I'll usually go to one of the courtyards that are quite secluded, that have a bit of shade, and I'll eat my lunch out there, whether it's the courtyard with the umbrellas at Faculty Lounge, or my favorite spot, which is the courtyard outside of the new private wing. And there's just a really nice breeze that comes through there to kind of cool me down with this crazy heat. So really try to take an actual lunch break. It actually prevents us from overeating when we're not distracted and we just keep shoveling food into our mouth. So try to take an actual formal lunch break away from your computer, okay? Now, when I'm doing a lot of thinking, such as when I'm writing a manuscript or when I'm putting together collaborative projects, or I'm doing, you know, a really tough lit review, you know, for some reason, I just need to fuel my brain. And you might feel that way as well, that after an hour or two of hard academic work, you get tired. And that's because we actually burn a lot of calories when our brain is working. When our gray matter is going on full speed, we're burning a lot of calories. So having healthy snacks on hand will actually improve your sustainability for maintaining your concentration and remaining at your workstation and working. And what I like to do is I actually have a jar of dried fruit, some dark chocolate, and seeds and nuts, what I essentially call bird food. I have a jar that sits right at my my desk at home at WR, and I usually end up getting fruit as well, and of course chai. I'm addicted to chai since I've come to Pakistan, and it's a constant battle trying to balance the intake of caffeinated chai and non-caffeinated chai. So drinking chai is really good, but try to keep a balance between caffeinated chai and non-caffeinated chai, because you don't want it to have an effect on your concentration, your attention span, and of course then your ability to sleep. So keep some healthy snacks close to you so that you can access them easily. I've alluded to this already, but try to get outside, okay? Getting vitamin D and getting some fresh air can work wonders for our mental health. This is proven. There's significant amount of research that speaks to the value of taking a break from work, exposing yourself to the sun to assist with vitamin D production, and engaging in physical activity. And I consider myself fortunate that I have some lovely areas to visit here on campus. And one of my favorite walks is to say hello to the little white creatures you see on the screen there, pretty much every other day. And it's a good walk. So try to get outside. If you don't tolerate the sun that well, then do it in the late afternoon or early evening when the temperature is much lower and there's far more shade. But try to get outside at least for 20 minutes every day. Exercise. I'm sure you were waiting, some of you, as to when I would say exercise. I really like this particular slide. I think this dog is really cute. But anyways, I'm gradually replacing the word exercise with physical activity. I find that using the word physical activity is not as daunting for many people. So just pretend it says physical activity instead of exercise. But exercise rhymes better with extra fries than physical activity does. So there's a little bit of method to my madness. Anyways, so we know from the literature that you and I, being adults, we need to get our heart rate up. We need to get our heart rate up for exercise to be of benefit to us. What does that mean? That means we have to engage in moderate intensity physical activity, okay? That means that we have to work at 60 to 75% of our maximum heart rate for the exercise or physical activity to be of benefit to us. And you're saying, what the heck is she talking about? Don't worry. You can consult your local friendly physio and they will guide you. So for each individual, there's a maximum heart rate, and there's a formula that we can use to calculate your maximum heart rate. That's the most number of times your heart should be allowed to beat in a minute with exercise, okay? Now, we don't want you to work at your maximum heart rate. We want you to work at 60 to 75% of your maximum heart rate, all right? That's where that's coming from. So, a physiotherapist can help you determine that. You need to do about 150 minutes a week of this moderate intensity physical activity. It can be anything. It can be a brisk walk. It can be gardening. If you have a dog, it could be walking your dog. If you have a pool, or if a friend has a pool that's chlorinated and you maintain social distancing, you can go to their pool and swim. If you have a bicycle, I have seen a few bicycles in Karachi. particularly in DHA and in KDA and some in Clifton. With less traffic, people are venturing outdoors more. So find an activity that you enjoy and try to engage in that for about 30 minutes 5 times a week. Now, we all may be overwhelmed by this. The notion of working out at moderate intensity for 30 minutes 5 times a week, it could be overwhelming. Totally understand. So you know what? Start with 10 minutes a day. That's it. I'm asking you start with 10 minutes a day. Do that for a couple weeks. Okay. Establish that as your pattern. If you can do 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, I know you can do 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Do that for 2 weeks. Then you bump yourself up to 20. And I guarantee you, you will become an exercise addict. Why? Because when we exercise, really good things happen in our body. Okay? I'm sure that some of the folks listening are medical professionals, so I don't need to go into a lot of detail. But, happy drugs, happy hormones, happy chemicals are released and are dumped into our bloodstream. And these are naturally occurring ways for us to feel good, to feel happy. You've probably heard of the runner's high, okay? This is what's going to happen is your body will respond quite positively to physical activity, and you will begin to crave it. And it's a good place to be when you crave physical activity. So start with 10 minutes. There's a caveat here though, okay? At least a couple times a week, you have to do some strengthening work, okay? To help maintain muscle mass, which decreases after the 3rd decade of life in everybody. So to maintain muscle mass, to maintain bone density, especially in women that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. We need to do impact type activities, and strengthening activities are an excellent example of that. Now, you could be doing this in a pool. Submerge your arms in the pool and move your arms back and forth. The water provides resistance. Going up and down stairs, but taking those stairs 2 at a time while you go up is a form of strengthening, okay? Doing push-ups, doing the plank, these are all forms of strengthening. Yoga and Pilates are also forms of strengthening, especially yoga. Yoga is actually one of my favorite activities to engage in because it works on strengthening, balance, coordination, flexibility, and mindfulness all at the same time. So if you're a super duper busy person, then yoga is your activity to do because it'll achieve multiple goals in one activity. If you require a bit more guidance, if you are a newcomer at engaging in regular physical activity, if you've been fairly sedentary, or if you have comorbid conditions, then I would encourage you to get medical clearance from a family doc before you engage in physical activity. And I would strongly recommend you consult a physiotherapist at the OPD at your local hospital, whether it's here in Karachi or in East Africa or anywhere else. And there's a ton of free apps that you can engage in as well. We're almost done. I'm going to be wrapping up in a couple minutes. So, there's a lot of apps that you can engage in, running apps, fitness apps. There's also guided web tutorials that you can engage in. Tone It Up, Peloton are 2 really popular ones among diehard fitness fans, and they're offering free trials. Orange Theory is one of my favorites because they have free daily 30-minute workouts, and they're really cool because they focus on arms, then they focus on the trunk, they focus on the legs. So, you're learning a lot about what types of activities to do as well. In the end, though, I hope that you look at working, learning, and teaching from home as a new opportunity. I know that it can be a challenge, and that it has been a challenge for many of us because it's something that we're just not used to. But I'm converted. I'm a believer. I've been a believer for 20 years. That for me personally, working from home, doing continuing education, i.e. learning from home and providing training seminars, that is teaching from home, is something that I really love to do. I find that I use my time much more wisely. I'm far more productive. And actually, the biggest benefit for me living in a really busy city like Toronto, which is very similar to Karachi when it comes to traffic, right? The traffic in Toronto and the traffic in Karachi are both ridiculous. It saved me a ton of time commuting. And you know, that 2 to 2.5 hours a day, that's precious time for me. It's precious time for all of us. And I can redirect that time towards my family, towards my friends, towards my spiritual activities, whether that be meditation or volunteering within my community, whatever that may be for you. But I think one of the biggest advantages of doing what we do from home is it saves us the commute. I think that's pretty much a wrap. I hope that you found what I've been bumbling on about useful. And I think we can open up the audience now to any questions or comments or even feedback you may have. And if you want to share your experiences about how your experience has been so far, you're welcome to do that as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Habiba. I can see in the chat window there are lots of comments. People are really appreciating your talk. There is one question though.
Okay.
And so the question is that so many of our students, faculty and staff do not have a separate room or separate desk or a proper chair. And some can't even afford to buy proper desk or a chair. So what are some of the alternative options for them?
Okay. So if you think back to the slide I showed you where I was able to jugaad my colleague's workstation for her, we have to get creative, okay? So if all you have is a mediocre chair, you cannot adjust the height of the chair, you cannot adjust anything about the chair, and you have a coffee table which is really low, you know, the best thing you can do is try to elevate your laptop or your computer. If you can at least optimize the height of your monitor, then that in and of itself will alleviate a lot of the ergonomic issues or challenges that you'd be facing. Trying to elevate the monitor is one of the best solutions. So you can, you can do that easily with things from the house, some books, an empty box, or any kind of box that you're not using, or a pile of books. I've done these for people in their homes who don't have many resources, and we end up using empty boxes or a stack of books or a stack of newspapers or magazines that they may have lying around, and that does the trick. So my piece of advice would be, if you can at least try to elevate your monitor so that when you're looking at the monitor, your eye line, your eyesight falls to within 1/3 of the top of the screen. That'll solve a lot of your problems. Okay? I hope that helps.
Yes, that's a really good response. Thank you, Dr. Habiba. There's a couple more. There's one which I will read quickly because it is something that I also struggle with. So can you share some tips on protecting wrist and finger joints while typing?
Yes. Okay. I'm really glad you asked that question. So I'm going to disappear for 1 second because I'm going to go get a prop and I'll be right back, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so what I have here is an external keyboard. Now, we're going to go through, and I'm just going to show you the components of a keyboard first, okay? So you understand what we're looking at. So if you work on a laptop, I strongly recommend, if you can afford it, if you have the resources, to purchase an external keyboard. Doesn't have to be fancy, okay? In Canada, this keyboard would cost about $19. I don't know how many rupees that is, but this is probably one of a fairly competitive a competitively priced keyboard. And you also want to obtain yourself a external mouse. Okay, now a keyboard sometimes has little legs on the back. The legs on this guy are broken. They're not there anymore, okay? But what these legs do is if you put them down, they actually angle your keyboard this way. So what that means is when you're actually keyboarding, okay, your keyboard will be angled. Somebody tell me if you can see what I'm trying to show here. Can you see that? So instead of the keyboard being flat, it'll be angled up like this. When your keyboard is angled up like this, what that does is it actually forces your wrist to go into extension, which is excessive bending back of your wrist. And this can cause a lot of problems. And in particular, it can cause a condition called carpal tunnel syndrome, which is compression of a nerve called the median nerve that runs through this part of your wrist, okay? And you can then begin to experience tingling and pins and needles in the thumb and these two fingers of the hand and this part of the palm of your hand. So you want to make sure that when you're using your keyboard that it's not angled up like this. You want to make sure that these legs on the back are actually flat. And you actually want to counter angle it. So what I normally do is I angle it up this way, okay? And what that does, if you look at my wrist in this position, if the keyboard is angled how it normally is, my wrist is in flexion when I'm keyboarding, all right? You see? If it's angled up like this, then I'm forced to keep my wrist in excessive backward motion or extension. But if I put the keyboard flat by taking the posterior legs down, and I actually angle it in the opposite direction, then now when I'm keyboarding, my wrist is in neutral. Okay, this is neutral, right? It's not bent excessively this way, nor is it bent forward. It's in neutral. So tip number one is to ensure that your keyboard is flat, or the front edge, the edge closest to you, okay, is actually bent up a little bit. Okay, and the way that you can do that is by taking a piece of styrofoam or plastic and just placing it under the front edge and ensuring that it's slightly angled up. And this will help maintain your wrist in neutral, which will get rid of a lot of your wrist problems. The mouse, okay, one of the most common mistakes I see with the mouse is that it's too far away. It's up there in the northern areas of Pakistan. You're in Karachi, but your mouse is in the northern areas. It's so far away, you can't even see it on the screen. The mouse should be right next to your keyboard, okay? I'm trying to do this so you can see. Hopefully you can see this. So if I'm keyboarding, if I'm using my keyboard, all I should have to do is a lateral motion to get to the mouse, not a lateral and forward motion to get to the mouse. Lateral motion and boom, my mouse is right there. Now, again, the same thing applies with the mouse, okay? You want to make sure that when you're actually using the mouse, this is the surface of the desk, okay? When you're using the mouse, want to make sure that your wrist is actually resting, the palm of your hand is actually resting on the desk. This is the desk, okay, and not on the actual mouse or too far away. You want to have, you know, the majority of your hand on the actual mouse itself, all right, in this position. So in this position, my wrist is in fairly neutral position, okay, and I've got one of the fingers on the wheel here, all right? So you want to have the mouse close to the keyboard, okay? You want to ensure that You've got the palm of your hand resting, this part of your hand is resting on your desk, and this part is actually resting on the mouse. And then thirdly, most mice have a wheel on them. This is the scrolling wheel, okay? A lot of people develop tendinitis or trigger finger issues, which is basically severe tightening of a tendon that runs along the inner part of the hand, and it can be quite painful. And what you can do actually is go into your computer settings and modify how efficiently this wheel works. Usually the default setting is if you scroll like this, it only moves down 3 lines. But you can actually change that. So every time you scroll, it actually moves down 15 lines or 20 lines, which means that after an 8-hour day, you have to scroll a lot less, okay? You can also increase the sensitivity of your mouse, which means that you don't have to be as aggressive with your movements. You're using your arm, your hand, your fingers less. There's less strain on your upper extremity, on your arm with use of the mouse. So you can increase the sensitivity of your mouse. I use Apple. So for a Windows-based system, I think you have to go into the control panel to do that. But I'm sure any IT person can help you figure that out, okay? So to recap, make sure that the keyboard is flat and that the front edge, that is the edge closest to you, is angled up a little bit. That'll help maintain your wrists in neutral. Number 2, keep the mouse close to the keyboard. Increase the sensitivity of the wheel. Increase the sensitivity of the mouse itself, okay? Does that answer your question, Azra?
Yes. Yes,
Good.
it does.
Okay.
And this one last question that I will ask, because I think it is also important.
Yeah.
A lot of our students, Dr. Habiba, use mobile phone, their smartphones,
Yes.
access their online course website and, you know, to do their assignments, sometimes they use. So what is a good position to apply, you know, when, so for example, head and neck, and, you know, what is your advice for those of us who use?
So, you know, this is again a bit of jugaad. I think some people have selfie sticks. A selfie stick is an inexpensive ergonomic assistive device. Okay. What you can do with a selfie stick is you can attach it to your mobile, and then you can actually use it to place your mobile at different heights. It'll make it easier for the student to actually position their phones. So that could be one solution. The other solution is, again, propping your phone up on something so you can elevate it. That's if you have nothing else that you can do, then propping your phone up on a box, a shelf, something, a pile of books to elevate it is great, because then your hand's free. You're not actually holding your phone. That'll help mitigate a lot of tension and potential stress in the neck and shoulder area. And of course in the arm as well. So again, the easiest solution, the most cost-effective solution is get a couple empty boxes and keep them handy, or a pile of books, and try to elevate your mobile up on that and angle your mobile. Okay, so if this is the mobile you're using, right, I'm going to do the side view. First of all, depending on what you're looking at, if it's a document and it's in landscape form, then you want to flip your mobile so that your mobile is in landscape form as well, to kind of capture the maximum screen of the person sharing their screen. That's the first thing. Okay, or you can have it in this format, whichever orientation. But you want to have your mobile angled back a little bit, just as you would a monitor. Okay, and again, you know, if I'm sitting like this and my mobile is here, that's too low, right? So what I could do is I could take a box and place the mobile on the box. And most mobile covers have a little stand on the back. So effectively, you've just elevated your mobile to a much better height than what you had initially. Okay, something like that. So those are a couple ideas on how to make it a bit easier for our students if the only device they have is a mobile phone. Try to elevate it, try to use a selfie stick to position it, and use easy to, cheap, inexpensive equipment like a stack of books or empty boxes to improve the height of the mobile. With the mobile, the most common factor is the angle at which you're viewing it. So if you can elevate the mobile to kind of the level of your eyes, the same rule applies. The eye line should fall within the top third of the screen of your mobile, okay? So if your eye line falls down here, the mobile is too high. If your eye line is way above, the mobile is too low. You need to bring it to about there. Okay, I hope that helps.
Hey, thank you. These were really good tips, Dr. Habiba, and I will now hand over the microphone to Vice Provost Quality Teaching and Learning, Dr. Tashmi, please, to conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Azra. Habiba, good to see you again. You certainly are an example that the more exercise you do, the more energy you seem to have. So certainly I see that in you role modeling for us. Thank you so much for this session. So far we have been focusing on what faculty do for students. And it is so good to hear someone focusing on the faculty themselves. And as your last slide showed, it reminded me of that announcement as we get on the planes that we no longer get on, that put the mask on yourself before you put it on others. And I think as we are now 4 months into the pandemic, we have got to think about our own well-being if we are going to give our all to our students. So Habiba, thank you so much for that session. I also want to thank you for the all the work you do as a volunteer. You could have gone back to Canada, I'm sure, but you didn't leave us alone, and we really appreciate the time and the knowledge that you are sharing with us, and not only at QTLnet, but in all the other things you do on the Pukar Forum, at the physiotherapy department and elsewhere. So thank you so much for that. And finally, just to thank Azra, as you did at the beginning, and the BDL QTL team for their continued energy and in putting these sessions weekly together. So shukriya, asante sana. We really learned a lot.